Hey everybody, welcome back for another video. My name is Tanya for those of you that are new here, and I am a watercolor artist. Today's video is going to be painting a landscape, but I'm going to be showing you how to use perspective while painting it. So I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so today's video is going to be a little bit similar to last week's video, but I'm going to take it a step further. Last week we did evergreens, like rainbow evergreens that were coming across the page, and I showed you how to make it look like there was water, the reflections in the water, the rainbows. It was really, really pretty and very whimsical. So if you didn't get to see that video, you can go back and look at that one if you want. But this week is going to be one step further. I'm actually going to put like mountains and sky in the background and a few birds. So it's going to be kind of a takeoff of last week's, but a little bit different. All right, so what I'm going to do is, first I've got my Arches watercolor paper. I've got an assortment of my Grumbacher paintbrushes here, so I'll let you know what size I'm using if you're following along with me. I've got my clean water, my paper towel, and then I've got my Winsor Newton watercolors. And I'm not really going to be telling you what colors I'm using today because it really doesn't matter. Like my sky, I might do like a reddish sky. You can go ahead and do a purple, a blue, whatever color sky you want, whatever color mountains you want. So I'm not really going to be telling you the colors I'm using, but I am going to go ahead and I'm going to spray my watercolors just to get them wet here a little bit. And I'm going to start by wetting my page. So I'm taking my 1/2 inch wash brush and I'm going to just go ahead and apply some water to it. You can tape down your paper if you want to at this point. I usually don't tape down my paper. I know a lot of people swear by it, and it's okay, whichever way you prefer. So I'm going to go ahead and wet just half my page right now because I'm going to start with my sky. So you don't want it oversaturated, but you do want it that if you look at it sideways, you see a little bit of a glare on the paper here. All right, so I've got about half of it wet. And I'm going to take, let's make more of like a reddish maroon sky. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that. And again, here you can use any color you want. And I might even switch it up and make some a little bit more, add a little blue to it, make it a little bit more purple. So it just depends on what you like. So I'm not going to be telling you the colors. All right, and I do want a little bit of a variation here, a little bit of gradation. So I'm going to make it a little bit darker at the top. So if you want to go ahead and apply a little bit more paint at the top. And since it's a sky, I don't really mind some of these white spots. See how this is a little darker and then you have a little bit of a line of a white lighter spot and then darker again. If you don't like that, then just go in the opposite direction like that, and then you can just smooth it out again. But that doesn't bother me because I want my sky to be gradated anyways. And I'm using the rough Winsor Newton. I'm not using the hot press. I'm using cold press, and I'm actually using the one that's a little bit rougher. So not the fine grain, I'm using the rough grain. So mine might be a little bit more texturized than yours. So if yours is looking a little bit smoother than mine, that's why. My paper is very rough. So that might be a reason why if you see a difference. I'm going to go ahead and apply a little bit more. And I'm just moving my brush horizontally back and forth across the sky. I'm going to apply a little bit more water down here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and let that dry. And just for the sake of the video, so it's not so long, I'm going to go ahead and dry it myself. Otherwise, you could just let it air dry. Now, if you didn't tape your page down, it will be buckling like this. And like I said before, that does not bother me. I just take my page and I gently roll it back in the opposite direction of the curl, and it straightens my page back out. If you don't like that, go ahead and tape your borders. So everybody does it different. So there's no right and there's no wrong. Okay, so now we're gonna start with our mountains. We're gonna have a couple of layers of mountains, like ones that are further back, and then the medium, and then the ones that are more in the foreground. So I'm gonna show you how to do that. I'm gonna still use my wash brush, and let's see, what color do I want those? I'm gonna go ahead and make them more of a blue. All right, kind of like a green blue, more of like an aqua. So if you want, you can make them, I'm not sure if the camera's getting this. Let me see, let me push everything closer here. I'm gonna be wetting my blue, and I'm gonna water it down on my palette because I want the ones further back to be a little bit lighter. So I'm gonna apply a good amount of water there. Just make sure your page is nice and dry, which mine's a little bit cool to the touch, which means it's still a little wet. I might get a little bit of a bleed through. Just make sure your paper is completely dry. And then you can make your mountains any which way you want. I'm gonna come across and make them jaggedy if you want to. So that they're, I mean, unless it's a nice smooth hill, you can make it as jaggedy as you want. And see how that's nice and light? That's gonna be my first layer. Bring that down a little bit so that you see some of that coming through. You don't have to bring it down all the way because we're gonna be putting other layers of mountains there. So that's our first layer, okay? Now you're gonna go ahead and let that dry or blow dry it like I will. And actually, I'm using a heat gun. I'm using a Milwaukee heat gun. You just don't wanna have it too close to your paper, otherwise you might burn your paper. Have it, you know, about 6 inches to 12 inches away from your page. So here again, I'm getting that little bit of curl since I dried it. And you can go ahead and just gently bend your page, and it goes right back to being nice and flat, or somewhat flat. There you go. All right, so now we're gonna be doing another set of mountains in the front, so it's gonna be a little bit darker. If you wanna choose to make it a different color, so you have like rainbow mountains, if you wanna be really, really fancy and whimsical about it, go ahead and do that. I'm gonna stick with the same color just to make it easier for the video. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna apply my same blue to my little puddle here that I had, but I'm gonna add a little bit more blue to it so it's a little bit darker. All right, and then I'm gonna come in, so see how we went down about 1 inch to 2 inches? Leave some of that showing through, and you can overlap the bottom here so you don't have all this white showing, because eventually we're going to cover all of our white here. You can have some of your mountains coming through, even if you want the second layer of mountains to be even a little bit further up, you can always come up with your mountain, or you could just leave it and kind of mimic what you just did. I am going to, I think I'm not going to come up yet. I might come up at the very end with a different layer that goes a little bit higher than the first mountain. And if you see that your paintbrush is getting dry, just go ahead and apply a little bit more. Again, bring it down 1 inch or 2. Okay. And it doesn't really matter what the bottom looks like because you are gonna add another layer of mountains to it. So just bring it down a good amount. Wash off your brush. Again, you're gonna go ahead and let this dry or dry it, and I'm just gonna go ahead and dry it. All right, so now we have our 2 sets of mountains here, and I'm gonna do one. As you keep going down, you're gonna make it a little bit darker and darker, and it's automatically gonna be darker anyways. Where you overlap the 2 colors, that's gonna automatically be darker. But go ahead and make your paint even just a little bit darker so that it's pretty dark even on the white part here. And I think I'm gonna make a couple different layers of mountains, a couple more. All right, so this is a darker blue than what I just did. And I'm gonna come up and make it come up a little bit here. And this part here is really fun. You could just go ahead and make whatever shapes you want. You can make your peaks and your valleys wherever you want. And again, bring it down about a good inch or 2. Add a little more water down here. There. Perfect. Go ahead and dry it. So the reason we're drying it is so there's no bleed through onto the next mountain. You want your lines to be nice and crisp. That's why we're going ahead and drying every layer. So now I'm going to come in with probably my darkest. So I'm just adding a little bit more of that blue over here. Same blue, I did not change my blue. And I'm gonna come in and maybe make one come straight up. Just like this mountain here is in the front and it's blocking some of your view. So then you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna fill in the rest of that with your blue. And I think I will have this one come up a little more and maybe come down this way a little more so it's not so steep, like that. And just have fun with your mountains here. And I keep dripping on my page. And I've been using the 1/2-inch brush the whole time. I guess I just want to keep dripping on my painting today. All right, so that looks really pretty. Now, if you want, you can even come in and with your damp brush, while this is wet, you can come in and lift up some of your paint. If you want it to be a little bit lighter down here, just lift up with just some water. And you can lift up some of that paint if you want it to be a little bit lighter down in the foreground. Or you could even make like a lighter mountain if you want to right here in the front with just water. See how I'm lifting that right now? Now it will not be a crisp line because it's wet, the whole thing is wet still, but you are lifting the paint. So you can go ahead and just lift the paint wherever you want. And if you want to skip this process, this step right here, you can totally skip that step. You could just make the whole mountain nice and dark. But I just want to show you that you can lift up some of your paint. You will never get back your white paper. That's what watercolor does. It stains your paper. You will never get back that white paper. If you wanted to keep a certain area white, I would suggest using Frisket, which is kind of like a rubber cement substance that protects your paper. So when you can paint right over it and then you lift it up at the end of your painting, and you will still have your white paper. Or you could just kind of skip that, that little section and just not paint it. But see how I'm lifting it a little bit here? I'm making a little bit of a reflection in my mountain. And you can lift as much as you want. You just have to keep going over it with a clean brush. Make sure you dab off your brush once in a while, dab it onto your paper towel. See how much I've taken off my paintbrush? And you could just keep going over it and lifting up the paint. So see how I created kind of a white line right there? If you don't like the white line, you can go ahead and, wet the whole thing and just take off some of the paint everywhere if you want to. And like I said before, you don't even have to do this step. You could just have left it the whole dark mountain. But I just wanted to show you that you can lift up your paint a little bit. You will never get that white back, but you can lift up your paint a little bit. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and dry that, and I'm gonna start doing the trees. I wanna show you the trees. So my whole painting is nice and dry. I'm gonna switch over. First, wash off your brush really well. You don't want that paint to sit in your brush. And then just kind of dab it off on your paper towel. Get that paint off there. All right, so I'm gonna be moving over to, let's do a size, I think this is a 2. I've used this brush so much that that the wood's actually, it's falling apart a little bit. It's time to get a new brush here. But I love this number 2, the size 2. All right, so I'm gonna be picking up probably some Payne's Gray. You can pick up some black, you can pick up Payne's Gray, whatever you have. It doesn't really matter. I would do the trees darker though. I wouldn't do like yellow trees. You actually want the trees because it's kind of a misty painting where the trees are just going to be kind of a very dark color. So you can use like a dark purple, a dark blue, a black, a Payne's Gray, something nice and dark. But I wouldn't use a lighter, like a yellow or a green. Even if you wanted to use maybe even like a dark red, that would probably be really cool too. But I'm going to keep it simple, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in some trees here. Actually, let's start with the back. You know what I'm going to do? I know I told you to use your number 2. I'm going to switch over to my size 000. It's a 000. And I'm going to go ahead and use that one first, because we're going to be doing the trees in the background on the very back row. And those, since the trees are very far back, they're going to look really, really tiny. That's why I just switched over. I apologize. That's why I switched over to my 000. And you can do any kind of trees. I'm going to keep it the evergreens like I did in last week's video. So you just want to come in with a little shaky hand, and you're not going to see too much detail because these trees are way, way in the back. You're just going to see like little shapes. And you can make as many as you want. I shouldn't leave that paintbrush. And that's another thing, guys. I just made a mistake of leaving my paintbrush in the water like this. Don't do that. Number 1, it can ruin your bristles. If it stays like that too long, you can start bending your bristles because as it hits the bottom of the cup. And number 2 is water starts getting in here, and it starts loosening up the glue from the brush to the handle here, and you don't want to do that either. And that's probably actually why some of my paint here is chipping off. It's probably because I've left this in the water a little too long. Don't do that. So just kind of dab it off and put it aside. Never leave your brushes in the water. Okay, so let's continue on. So we're going to be making these little marks here. And it's just going to be kind of like, I'm going to do them just kind of like on the tip of the mountain here. The tip, they're not really going to be kind of coming in. I'm just going to do like the edge here of the mountain. And you can put as many as you want. So what I do is I do a little vertical line down, which kind of gives me the height that I want. And I just kind of come in with a shaky hand and make some little branches. And you can always alter it if you want to, add a little bit more, make it a little bit taller, make it a little bit fatter, whatever you want. So I'm going to come in and just do some here. Now see, I've got a little bit too much water on my brush with this one, so my tree's a little bit chubbier, which is totally fine. I actually like the way that looks. Now, as you paint the trees on the mountains that are closer to you, your trees are going to get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger because it's getting closer to you. So these trees are going to be tiny. They're only about 1/4 of an inch on my page. So another thing I want to talk to you guys about is I'm constantly trying to come up with new ideas for you guys. I try to put out at least 1 video a week for you. If you'd like me to go to 2 videos a week, let me know. And another thing is, let me know some subjects that you'd like me to paint for you. Because, I mean, there's a million things I can teach you guys out there. I just don't know what you're interested in. So if you could just write in the comments what you're interested in me teaching you, that would be great. And I'm probably going to speed up this video because these little trees are taking me some time to make here. And I don't want to bore you. But like I said, as I go on to the other mountains, the trees are going to get a little bit larger and taller. And if you want, you can kind of come in and put a little bit of a shadow under these trees. See how I'm doing that with just a wet brush? I'm coming in and I'm just putting a little bit of shadow just to kind of ground them a little bit on my mountain here so it doesn't seem like they're just floating. Actually, I'm going to use a little bit bigger brush for this. So just take some water and you could just kind of touch it. My trees are still wet. Just kind of touch it and you will automatically get a little bit of a bleed, which will then look like a shadow. And you could just bleed that right down your mountain. There. See how it grounds them a little bit? I'm not going to do too many over here because I already have a plan of making some nice big trees in the foreground here. So I'm not going to put too many there. I'm going to concentrate more on this side of my page. So, okay, so that was the 000. Let's go ahead and move to the 2 now. And I'm going to take still my Payne's Gray. And now, you know what? If you came down with your water a little too much here, like I did, it might have a little bit of bleed through as you're making these trees. So go ahead and just dry those trees really quick, just to be sure that when you're making these trees, you don't have bleed through onto your next mountain. So I'm going to take some more Payne's Gray. I'm going to do the same exact thing that I just did on that first layer, but obviously my trees are a little bit bigger, a little bit thicker, because they're closer to me. In this picture, you're standing like right here, so everything far back is going to be smaller. And you can, like I said, you don't have to do evergreens. It's an easy tree to do. That's why I'm doing it for you. But you can make any kind of trees you want. So this is a pretty easy painting. It's just kind of the same step over and over and over again with the trees, with the mountains. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and dry that so that these trees don't bleed into those. All right, so I'm taking still my size 2. I didn't move up another brush. I'm staying at my size 2. And let's go ahead and put in some bigger trees. So they're gonna be taller, they're gonna be fatter. And you can actually even overlap some of your trees. If you think it needs to be bigger, totally fine to overlap some of those trees. Actually, it looks a little bit more realistic when you do. Shaky hand. Just go back and forth. And I'll do one right here. And then just bleed it out a little bit, just so it kind of grounds the trees a little bit. Gives it a little bit of a shadow. Just come up around the trees. You don't have to come up all the way. Let's say like I came up all the way there. I mean, obviously the tree's not going to make a shadow that big, so you can take some of that off if you want to. Just bleed it down. There. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and dry that, and then I'm gonna come in with my foreground trees, which are gonna be the biggest trees. All right, and then some of my trees are a little bit lighter than what I wanted, and that's okay, because we can go over them again. All right, so I'm gonna be moving now to my size 5. Because these trees are going to be taller and thicker. And I could actually even come in, oh, you know what? My banana bread is done. The house is smelling so good right now, but I'm going to go turn off my oven. Okay, so like I said, I moved to a size 5. These trees are going to be thicker and taller. So I'm going to go ahead and pop in a tree coming straight up, because this mountain here is the closest to you. So your trees could be as large as you want. You could actually even have them bleeding off your page if you want to. Let's make one maybe come, and I always do the vertical line first, just to show me the height of my tree. And then I can come in. I've got a little too much paint on my brush. There we go. There we go. I didn't have enough paint One second I had too much paint, and the next one I didn't have enough paint. All right, and then as your tree goes down, I said this in the last video from last week, as your tree goes down, it's gonna be a triangular shape because these are evergreens, and evergreens kind of have a triangular shape. Some are fatter, some are skinnier. There's a million different types of evergreens out there. But just pick one and go with it. And these are actually gonna be nice and dark. And if you think that this brush is not working for you, the size 5, you can always go a little smaller, you can always go a little bigger, just depending. Everybody's got a different kind of stroke. Just depends on what works for you. And see how I'm leaving some space in between there? Because trees are not completely solid. There's always a little bit of, you know, breathing room in there between the branches. So I just, as my hand is going off the camera here, I'm just picking up more paint. That's all I'm doing. So see how it's kind of got that triangular shape? It's a nice, tall, skinny evergreen, but it still has that triangular shape. And if you think it's a little bit too airy in the middle, just come in and dab it a little bit. Don't dab your branches too much because those are a little bit airier than the middle of the flower. Not flower, I'm sorry, the tree. So you can just come in and add a little bit more like that if you want to, just in the middle here. And then just make your tree come down as far as you want. And I'm gonna do right about there. And you can extend your branches. If you see that it's too straight, you can always extend your branches on the bottom so it's a little bit wider at the bottom. Really pretty. Okay. I am going to go ahead and bleed that out a little bit on my mountain here just before it dries. So I'm just coming in with clean water and I'm bleeding that down the hill a little bit. And I think I'm going to add another tree right here. Let's see, let's do one right here. And you could always, like I said before, you could always overlap your trees. No big deal. Looks more realistic when you do. This tree doesn't have to be as tall as that one. I just wanted to create a little bit of height on this side with my hill, my mountain, and my tree. So always try and map out how you want it to look before you even start, because that way it just gives you an idea in your head. My paintings rarely turn out the way I intended them to, but that's okay. It just means my mind that was going through the process wanted it to look a little bit different, and that is totally fine. And I think I'm going to add another tree down here. So I'm going to start even closer to me in perspective. So let's have this tree maybe come up to there. So I'm overlapping, totally fine. And I'm running out of Payne's Gray. It's time to refill my little pans here. You can have the brush, the bristles go up in like a V. You can have them come down. All trees are different. There's no right, there's no wrong. My bristles have a little bit of angle going up the branches. Just a little bit of an angle. But if it helps, I'm not looking at any image right now. I'm just kind of going off memory of what the trees look like. But if it helps, definitely Google some evergreens or whatever tree you want, and that'll give you an image to go off of. But remember, this is your painting. It doesn't exactly have to look like the photograph that you're looking at. It's just to give you a reference. Because sometimes when I tell my students, because I teach outside of YouTube, I actually do teach. And I tell my students, make it your own painting. Otherwise, you will get frustrated if it's not looking exactly like the image you're looking at. And besides, who really wants to copy? Make it your own. That's why we're painting anyways, just to You know, have fun, relax. You don't want to sit here and get all frustrated that it's not looking like something that you're looking at. All right, so this tree came all the way down, and I'm going to take some clean water, and I'm just going to kind of make a little bit of a shadow around him. And I think I want the bristles or the branches down here a little bit thicker, a little bit longer. There. That's really cool. All right, I love it. And I think I'm gonna have another one come up right here. I think this painting is asking for it. And so that's another thing I wanted to talk about. So the composition of a painting, if you see that you have a negative spot here and you love that, that's what you intended to do, great. If not, go ahead and pop in another tree or whatever subject you're painting. And just kind of get rid of some of that negative space if that's not the way you wanted it to look. That's why sometimes I like painting not looking at an image, because I can go ahead and make it any way I want. So I'm going to do the shadow. Just a little bit of shadow under him. Nothing major. Just to kind of ground him on your painting a little bit. And we don't exactly have a light source on this painting, which I mentioned in other videos. Its light source can be anything from the sun to the moon to a window, depending on what you're painting, wherever your light source is coming from. This painting here, it kind of looks like that the sun is maybe just starting to come up from under the mountains here. So they would probably be lit from the other side that we're not even seeing. So that's why I kind of put a shadow coming down behind them, is because to me, it looks like the sun is just starting to peek through. Even though we don't see it, that's where the light source is coming from on this painting. All right, so I'm gonna be going back to my size 000. And I'm going to take my Payne's Gray. I'm going to put a couple little birds in the sky because it looks like it just needs a little something. So I'm just taking my really skinny 000 brush, and I'm just going to be doing like these little wings, just really generic little wings in the sky, just to kind of come in a little bit and fill in a little bit of that negative space. And you could do as many birds as you want. They could be close together, they could be far away, you could have one way up here. So it's just to kind of bring your eye even up a little bit. Now's the time to go ahead and darken up some of your trees. If you want them to be a little bit darker than this, go ahead and darken them. Like I see a tree here that I wanted it to be a little bit darker than that. It looks like it faded a little bit on me. So I'm just gonna take my brush and my Payne's Gray and just go over it a little bit. I'm just kind of going over the branches that I had previously done. I'm not making new branches. I'm just going over the same branches just to darken it. And I think I'll darken this one too a little bit. Now, if you like that, not everything has to be really dark. You can leave some, variation of the lights and the darks in here. It just depends on what you like. There's no right and there's no wrong. Don't let anyone tell you that there's a wrong way. There's really not. It's what you like. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and blow dry this and see the finished product. And there you go. Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you liked it and learned a little something. And if you did like it, please give me a thumbs up, and you can consider subscribing to this channel if you'd like more videos like this one. And don't forget to leave a comment in the comment section of what other kind of videos you'd like me to make for you. Have a great day. Bye.